Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 27. This week, Burlington Cougar Alumni on. This guy I was teammates with there for 2 seasons. Spent a lot of time together with him on and off the ice. Also played against him in college. Saw him work his way up through the pro ranks. Now he's moved over to the front office there in Lehigh in the AHL. Another GTA guy that found a way and it created his own path. Welcome to the podcast, Greg Carey.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks for having me.
Happy to be here, man. Obviously, as we talked about off camera, you're recently a father again, I would say. So the second one has come, and so we're catching you at the right time, right in nap time, feeding time. So we'll get this out.
Yeah.
Um, so I always like to go back to the beginning. So obviously, you were born and raised, I believe, in the Hamilton region. Is that where you first started to play hockey, learn to skate, etc.?
Yeah. So like everyone has their hockey story and kind of how they were raised and taught and learned. So like my old man was a supervisor for the city of Hamilton, and he managed this Carlisle City Amalgamated. He managed hockey rinks. It's easy to learn how to play hockey when your dad manages 5 hockey rinks growing up. So he kind of would take me and my brother out to the rinks, and that's really where we first kind of started. Um, and on top of that, he would build an outdoor ice rink at the park across the street, and he did that until I don't think it gets cold in Canada anymore, unfortunately, especially in Hamilton. I think we used to have winters where we get like 60 days of ice outdoors on a basically built on my dad's back, just fire hoses and donated sheds and just grinding the cold weather to skate outside. But um, when your dad has access to ice time, and you know how expensive ice time is, even here where I live, it's crazy expensive. Being able to kind of have that as an asset and learn from him and have that availability kind of is a great way to kickstart a young kid's hockey career.
Well, your first comment there just about the outdoor rinks, like I think every kid probably our age and maybe a little bit older was fortunate enough to go through that time because as you said, now it's global warming and it's too hot. So you won't get the 60 days of
No.
ice outside. And that was those childhood memories, man. Come home from school and just go right out to the backyard or to the local park. But you and your brother obviously both ended up playing a long time hockey, but I'm curious, like when your dad was taking you to the rink there at the start, like were you both like drawn to the sport right away, or was it kind of mixed emotions?
So I was first. Um, Beating a hockey stick around. It's Canadian kids. Everyone's like, "How'd you get into hockey?" It's Canada. So you're hitting the playing with a mini stick and in the kitchen, and that's my mom's like, "Well, I think you got to get him into hockey." And my brother didn't have any interest till he was about 4. I started skating when I was like 3, and then he got to 4, saw me do it, and he's like, "Oh, I want to do it." And of course, he gets the bug, and um, then we were off to the races.
It's a great way to start. And maybe this will tie into the next thing here is you're really known for your shot. Like your shot was so hard. I remember facing you in practice. Was just hoping you wouldn't hit the net or it would just go in so I wouldn't have to take one of those in the palm. But do you think like because of like you starting at that young age and obviously having access to, whether it was an outdoor rink or your dad at the local rink, do you think that's a big reason how you like were able to, produce a shot like that, especially at a young age? Like even in minor hockey, it was hard.
Yeah, it was. I was always shooting pucks. We'd go up to the rink. We'd say load up into the back of the car. We'd go shoot pucks. We had one of our buddies was a goalie, and we'd throw him in the back of the car. And I mean, he'd get peppered for about an hour, and then he'd want to play forward. And we once there was no goalie, we didn't want to play anymore. But yeah, we used to. It was all right. We're gonna shoot pucks. We're gonna go shoot pucks, and there definitely was a major emphasis on shooting pucks, especially kind of how my dad taught it. And then we absolutely used to beat the shit out of the garage door, old steel garage door, and just absolutely destroyed it. Mom got a new one. I think maybe we were 10, 11 years old, and there was no more shooting pucks in driveways. So um, that had to stay at the outdoor rink or one of my dad's rinks. But it's something we always kind of, I mean, even training like through college and junior, like we would work it with goalie schools so we could shoot pucks. was kind of something I always enjoyed. Definitely, probably more than skating or doing that. It was just if I could shoot the puck in the driveway at the outdoor rink at a goalie school and shooting hockey camp. That those are the ones I'm opting for.
Hmm. No, it's definitely something that I think a lot of players who haven't done it or have been hesitant to do it should start doing more is going to goalie schools because the goalies go through so many reps there. Sometimes it's two groups and they're on the ice maybe once or twice a day. So there's 2 to 4 ice sessions where you're just ripping pucks and it's for the goalies, but at the same time, it also benefits you because you're working on little skill things. Normally these goalie sessions have game situations too that,
Mm-hmm.
can transmit to your game as well. So I always felt that a lot of good shooters. So I'd see at these camps, you could see why they did well in their various leagues. But what was your minor hockey path like? Like I forget, like were we against each other there, Hamilton Bulldogs, or were you somewhere else?
First year I was with the reps when I was eight
Okay.
years old, and then flipped over to the Stony Creek Icebreakers, which became the Bulldogs. Actually saw the Icebreaker jersey. It's pretty sick. My mom has all the jerseys just tucked away in storage at the house. But yeah, it played. I think I took a year off because of the coach or a coaching situation. Randy Cadice wasn't going to coach the team, um, and I played hub hockey for a year, then went back to AAA with the Bulldogs, and um, yeah, spent the majority of my minor hockey league career with them.
Cowardice, what a pest that guy was. But no, that's pretty cool. I was trying to remember there. Obviously, you remember Dan because he was obviously like a little guy, as I said, little pest running around. And then I think Ronaldo was on the team one year, maybe
Yeah,
if I remember
yeah, he was a
correctly.
15-year-old year. He
Yeah.
was on the
Okay.
team with Luke Watson on that team as well.
Yeah.
We were heavy and we hit hard. I don't think we were. I don't remember our record. Weren't that great, but um,
You guys led the league in something, so
yeah.
probably penalty minutes. But no, the first thing I want to talk to you about, which I thought was pretty unique, was after your OHL draft year, you end up playing, I believe it's junior C the next year in Glanbrook instead of going and playing midget. And I'm curious, what was your decision there? Because there's always the weighing factor. So like midget, you go back, know somewhere where you're going to get a lot of ice, and then even making the jump to junior C, there's never that guarantee because you are playing with kids who are older than you. Like, did you feel you were just ready to make a jump up from minor hockey?
Yeah, so I got cut from uh, all the junior A teams. Got cut from Stony Creek Junior B, and then I was going to go play midget. And my uncle was like, "I think you should maybe try out for this junior C team because, again, like you said, kids are older. It benefits you if you're going to go play against older players in junior. You're going to try and do that. It benefits you to play against bigger and older kids because I think you can play up to 20 years old in junior C. Um, the hockey is pretty good, especially as a 16-year-old. And so I went out there. I think you're only allowed one 16-year-old, one or two 16-year-olds, and I made the team. Um, and I don't regret it. I had a ton of fun. There were some awesome guys on that team. Um, my mom, long story short, my coach uh, Greg Claus had passed away, but she went to high school with my mom, which is kind of just like a small world thing in Hamilton, have pretty big city, but yeah, year in the Jungle Sea was a blast.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool to see, man. Like I've seen just from like a bias perspective, like I think Steve Mason started there one year in
Hmm.
Grimsby, and then the next year he was in the OHL. So like it's
Yeah,
there's that always that decision, I guess, between major midget and junior C if you can. And I think there's pros and cons to each.
absolutely.
Midget, obviously, you can still do the tournament stuff, which I know a lot of kids miss at that age, the going somewhere. But no, that's good. And then the next year, evidently, this is when we meet each other, right? So you make the jump to tier two junior A there for the Burlington Cougars, and I did the same thing as well. And we end up playing the next 2 years there together. And I mean, you end up playing 3 years there, and I just like it seems like every year, like you just were able to take this like massive leap in both like production and obviously like maybe confidence as well. Your last year there, which I think is the most important season to talk about, the 09 2010 season, you and Juice obviously play together and you guys just had unbelievable chemistry that year. You set, I believe, a record for 72 goals in the season, and Josh got 92 assists or something, breaking his dad's record. Like you two were just unstoppable. Like that third year, did you just kind of feel like, you know, going into the season, like everything felt good, you were ready to go, you knew what to expect, or did you do anything different that summer? Like how did you increase so much over your couple of years there in the junior league?
We started training a little bit. Obviously, it's still like when we were growing up, like I think there was maybe SST,
Mm-hmm.
and but it like training and stuff wasn't huge. Um, Not like it is now. I feel like kids start at 10 years old, 8 years old. They have programs for them to start doing, even if they're not lifting weights, they're working out. So started to work out a little bit. We found a trainer and that helped. We weren't super into it because again we're hockey players. We're shooting pucks in the summer and training and we were on the ice, well, 3 or 4 or 5 days a week. I just felt like, I don't know, I had 30 something goals the year before as an 18-year-old, and then you're going as a 19-year-old. You're like, I can definitely do better. And I had an incredibly hot start. I think I went back to back hat tricks, a 1 goal game and then a 4 goal game. And I was like, I remember Mark Jersey's like, I thought you were going to score 50. He's like, now I think we're looking like 60. Um, and then school start calling. There were definitely some weaker teams in the league that year, but I mean, scored against everyone. I don't think there's someone that Josh and I didn't produce against. Both over 100 points and 40, like 50, like just under 50 games. So um, scoring goals and putting up points is something valued in any league. Doesn't matter if it's, if it's Pee Wee, Junior, the Dell. I mean, that's how you win hockey games. You got to outscore the other team. So we had a special chemistry, and it's something that you only kind of get a couple times in your career, and if you can get it once, it's remarkable. You see with these tandems in the NHL, like Ovechkin and Backstrom, and like that's not on every team. You don't have that. There's certain reason why guys can that they just jolly, they just find each other, and I definitely had that with Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I think you two obviously suit each other's playing styles. Like he was very known for being able to see the ice while playmaking, and obviously you were a goal scorer. And I mean, you also put up some assists too. Not to chirp you, but I think a lot of them might have been rebounds. But no, it was good. And obviously, into that year, which I think something that you got to do was cool, and I got to do it the year before, was you got to represent Team Canada there in the World Junior A Challenge. Like, uh, how was that experience for you? And where was your tournament that year?
So we were in Somerset, PEI, and I was very nervous because like we're in a microcosm, like we're just in a small league, and then you're talking you're representing the eastern half of the country, and there's some very good hockey players that you end up playing with and against, and it's obviously it's not the major junior level, but a lot of these guys turned out and played pro. And I mean, Lucas Lacio played on that team as a 16-year-old, and then got drafted in the second round to the Coyotes. Like we're so young, but it's definitely very cool. I mean, that's a moment I cherish. We lost in the bronze medal game, but it's just an awesome experience. I mean, you get to represent your country. Only the best of the best get to do that, and so to just be considered in that tier in uh, junior A is very very cool, very special.
It's always great when you can put on your country's jersey. I'm just looking at the roster here. Funny enough, Lucas Lesio, I saw him last night. He was playing for Balzano against Mannheim. I was
Mm-hmm.
at that game, so he was on the ice. And then yeah, you had some other
How'd
guys
they
too.
do?
They
I,
lost, but he's obviously very noticeable. Like he was in the Dell last year.
he
I
can fly.
Yeah, I believe he was in the Dell year last year, the year before he was in Crayfield at one point. But yeah, good player. Obviously, you have some other good players on the team, like Julian Melchiori. Obviously played,
Mhm. Yeah.
long time Winnipeg system, and now he's over in the
Mhm.
Dell. Brock Higgs, Nick
Mhm.
Hurd was a longtime Del 2 guy, Alex Guptill. So yeah, you guys obviously, Colin Campbell too. Um, Andrew Kaloff, wow.
Yeah,
This is a
yeah, it was,
star-studded roster.
dude, it was good. I just saw them all in college. It was crazy. Um, so
Yeah, I mean, those teams, like, people say sometimes, well, it's not the World Juniors. Well, you're right, but no one from tier two junior is going to make the World Juniors because, they're either getting ready to go to school or they're trying to make the OHL. Like,
mhm,
the World Juniors takes from the step ahead. But these guys, like my
mhm,
team, we had Brandon Peary, uh, Riley Smith just won a cup. Like we had good guys too. So it's a very good tournament. So if you ever get the chance, anyone listening, to play in that tournament, work your butt off to get a chance to represent your country there because it's a fun tournament. It goes quick. But as you said, it takes you out of that pool. Like, we were so secluded there in the GTA, and then you're representing Eastern Canada, and there's like guys from five other leagues, right? So
mhm.
it's a cool tournament. But after that third year in Burlington, you end up getting a D1 scholarship to St. Lawrence University. But I'm curious, so throughout that last year, especially, like, I mean, you were getting interest before, but that last year, obviously, a record-breaking season. Like, how many teams were you talking to? Were you going on a lot of visits? And then, what made you, in the end, choose St. Lawrence University?
So I kind of probably like 20-ish, 25-ish teams. Then there's like some that are more serious and some like you're not interested in. I didn't really get any interest from like the big name. Like there was no Minnesotas or Michigans or Wisconsin. There's a lot of uh, interest from your uh, from Atlantic hockey and then ECAC. I mean, could have gone to Union, but they didn't have scholarships, which is that's a whole thing. So I did back to back. I went to Bowling Green and could have gone there, and it's like there was like that All Star game. It's like I went to Bowling Green, went to an All Star game, drove home, got in the car, went up to St. Lawrence. It was just like over 8 days. It was kind of wild. And we drove up to St. Lawrence in a snowstorm. Of course, in North Country, there's snow. Um, and my dad's like, "We got to go where?" I'm like, "We got to go to St. Lawrence. We got to go visit." And when I stepped on campus, it was like I thought that this was somewhere where I could go to college. It felt like a college. It was small. Class sizes were going to be small. It kind of gave me that. You're not going to get lost in a big school. Um, this is Penn State land. Everyone goes to Penn State. Penn State is huge. I mean, that building and program is amazing, but there's something to be said about a smaller college and the experience that you can get. So I think they were kind of actually coming down to play Niagara, and the head coach Joe Marsh and assistant coach Mike Hurlbut drove from Niagara to rent a car, drove from Niagara to my house to have dinner with my family. Um, and that pretty much sealed the deal. We shook hands, and um, I committed to go to St. Lawrence.
It's cool to hear that. Fun fact, I was probably on the bench for Niagara during that. Uh, because I remember the going to St. Lawrence. I couldn't remember them coming to us, but who knows? So long ago. But yeah, I remember you guys had the cool like the rink had like that almost like old feel to it, like the wooden like kind of
52. Yeah,
yeah.
it's all wood. So
Yeah.
they put in a ton of money. I haven't been able to get up. It's very difficult to get to the North Country from just about anywhere. But
Hmm.
where we used to live, because you could just drive up the 403, QE. I can't remember. Road up to Ottawa. But um, they kind of kept the old school like wood. Like you get 3,500 people in there. It's bumping.
Hmm.
And so I definitely miss that. The college atmosphere is so much different than pro. It's kind of crazy.
And before we talk about your just experience there at St. Lawrence, I wanted to ask one more question. So when you were having success, especially in tier two junior, like when we were playing together, had there ever been a thought in your head about like going major junior, or at some point had you just kind of turned off that avenue and been like, you know what, I'm 18 years old, like there's no point anymore. I want to go to school.
So I did when I was 18 and when I was 19 had teams ask. for me to jump over to major junior. And I just feel like when you hit 18 years old to um, commit to uh, major junior. I mean, I know they offer school packages and stuff like that, and I had people tell me, you can still get your school paid for, um, but I kind of had my mindset once you see guys like you leave and your buddies leave to go to go to play tier or Division One college hockey in the States, that just becomes your goal. And I remember my senior year of high school sitting down with the guidance counselor, and I hadn't applied to any colleges, and he's like, "Are you sure you don't apply to this and this?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna go play hockey the States." And it was kind of beyond him. He didn't really understand. And it didn't matter because I did. But I was like, no, I'm going to go play Division One hockey in the States. So I'm okay. I don't need to apply to any Canadian colleges. And he really kind of argued with me. And I was like, I'm sorry, but like that's going to be my path. That's what I'm going to go do. And made it happen.
The problem with some of those guidance counselors, like if they have no familiarity with like obviously, don't get me wrong, whatever it is, 80% of the students are normal at high school, so they're going to like university, but like there are that
The
athlete ones
outliers.
who are, yeah, who are looking to go over to the States and stuff. But no, that's funny. And I like, for someone who's never been to St. Like I've only been to the rink, obviously, never been to the campus. Like how is the campus? Like, is it, you know, you said it's smaller, but is there like, stuff to do around there? Is it like a small town, medium-sized town? Like obviously too, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. How was the party scene? Because that's obviously part of university, but just how was the all experience for you at St. Lawrence, both on the ice and off the ice?
St. Lawrence is so much fun. We always say like we couldn't get in trouble at St. Lawrence. It's kind of a use don't abuse policy. So there's no campus police. There's town police. It's a little village, Kansas village, a couple thousand people. The school adds 2,500 to the town, so it's small. You're up in the middle of nowhere. There's two bars. One bar where you dance, and it's a little kind of gross, called the TikTok, and then the Hoot Owl where you can get your dollar beers on Tuesday nights, and you kind of go and I think you had to be 21 and over to get into to the Hoot Owl. But the most. It was so much fun going to St. Lawrence because it just is like it was a genuine college experience. Like we got to experience every part of it: the parties, the hockey, going to class, and I mean, travel kind of sucked because you're bussing all over, and there's no airports near. The closest airport, Syracuse, and we only flew to Minnesota. But it experience from a I would do it 100 times out of 100. I would choose St. Lawrence.
No, it sounds like it was a cool experience and kind of something that you yourself were looking for, like not crazy big, but like
Mm-hmm.
a little smaller, which I know some people look for that. I definitely looked for that too. And I mean, you obviously enjoyed it on the ice as well. Very productive college career, especially I said this to, I can't remember the last one of the other guests I had on where we were talking about their college career, but to say your worst season like point wise was 37 points, so over a point per game every season. Your last two seasons were very, very productive. Were you, so here's an interesting question for you, because I know, so your junior year, I believe your brother came, but he couldn't play. He had to sit a year, and then you guys ended up playing together your senior year to there in his, I'll say sophomore year, but his first year playing really. Um, After that junior year though, like were you getting interest to sign pro? Because obviously you had 51 points in 38 games and had been proven productive player in the league for 3 years.
There was some interest. There was no firm numbers or offers, and I already had it in my head that I wanted to graduate because, um, as you know, like in pro hockey, to to give it to give up an education. I mean, you look at a liberal arts school; it's their tuitions are 60 to 70 grand. That's kind of what you make as an entry level player. Obviously, you get your bonus, but if you're turning pro, you're going to the coast here, you're playing in the American League as a rookie. Like that's kind of how you look at it. When Joe Marsh sat down with me before I went there, he was like, "We're going to hand you 200 grand. What are you going to do with it?" And so it's all I could never get that out of my head. I was like, I have to get my education first. Um, Maybe it shortened my pro hockey career a little bit, but who knows? Maybe I don't. Maybe I leave too early and I fizzle out at 25 or 26. I don't get to play till I'm 30, 31, 32 years old. So you you can never know. But I was happy with staying. You know, I met my wife there, so spent senior year having fun playing with my brother for the first time in a very long time, and the last time I got to play with him, graduated and got to turn pro. It was kind of like just a 2013, 14. It was it hit every
Mm.
kind of note that it needed to.
Yeah, before we talk about you moving on, like obviously, as I said, you played with your brother there, and just you brought it up before, like you only get so many times, maybe once or twice in your career, where you can play with someone who, sees you on the ice just as well, or maybe, as you just both know what you're doing. Obviously, first you had that with Juice, and then obviously in college, I think that year you and your brother kind of like the Sedin twins in a sense, like just always knew where each other were on the ice because you'd spent so many, winters on the backyard rink, like playing together. So just talk about how cool that experience was to spend your last year with him.
Yeah, so I mean, I had 28 goals my junior year, and I think I only maybe had 18 my senior year. But again, a lot of my assists ended up being rebounds, probably power play points. But you know, we ran the number one power play in the country, which as your St. Lawrence, it's absurd. I have my one of my fondest memories. We went to North Dakota, home of how many like NHL legends went to North Dakota, and we beat them. St. Lawrence went to North Dakota and we beat them. And they were writing articles because they were worried about like our offense. And we did. We dominated them. I think we had 4 power play goals. I had 3 power play assists. And they ended up they had to have a closed door meeting after the game because they got embarrassed by St. Lawrence and they beat us maybe 3-2 the next night. And they went on to, I think they made the tournament that year. But you know, my brother was definitely a big part of that. We gelled really well, and I mean, it was just so much fun. I think there are only a couple games we didn't get points, and if you're getting points, it's as a skilled player, it's easy to stay up. So um, our season ended against Colgate that year, uh, which was probably too soon. But I always say with St. Lawrence, like there's so many good players that play in different eras. It's not a big enough draw to get them all there at once. But if you could combine like a decade of the really high end players, I mean, it could have made a really significant run at a national championship. But it's a small program, and I mean the ranking stuff has improved, and they got new great coaching, so hopefully it's coming in the future. But um, yeah, I mean that season uh, lost the Hopi Baker to Johnny Gaudreau in the Hobie hat trick. He's a pretty good player, and just to for St. Lawrence to be up there with Boston College is crazy. You would never you don't compare a school small ECAC school, and it did also help back to back years Yale and Union won national championships, so it definitely brought the respect level up of the ECAC.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna lose the summit, I guess you're gonna lose to Johnny Gaudreau.
Johnny Hockey.
Johnny Hockey. But yeah, no, that's I mean, to be up for that award too, like your last year there, I think it's, as you said, you kind of hit all the points on the bucket list or the checklist to go out. And um
I
I'm
think
curious
I
about
was
your hmm?
first team All American that year with Hayes and Gaudreau and Goss to spare, and I was just like, it's a pretty damn good first team. A lot of current NHL players, so it's like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, ECAC player of the year too. So like it's,
Yeah,
I mean, pretty good year, I would say. And then I'm curious about so after this year ends, you said you want to get your degree. I am curious what you graduate in, but also like at this point, like you're obviously getting contacted by teams. So how did you end up picking to go to Portland? I believe at that time they were affiliated with Arizona. So how did you end up making that decision that, yeah, this is where I see a good fit and a chance for me to, live my dream of playing pro hockey?
so Arizona's always kind of a wild card. I think they were still Phoenix when I signed. They were still Phoenix, and there's always there's opportunities for players to play there. Minnesota was in the mix, Philly was in the mix, and then I was offered like kind of a huge PTO that ended up getting the league was like, no, you guys are trying to circumvent the cap, so you can't do that. But that was the reason why I went to Arizona and signed there and went through my first training camp, and it definitely is eye opening because when you go from college where you're one of the best players to playing against the best players, you're like, wow, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. This is not going to just be walk in, just sign a ticket and play in the NHL for 10 years. So um, grateful to have the opportunity to sign my first contract with Phoenix. But it definitely is an eye opening experience.
I think that's always a big jump for anyone because it's just so different. And obviously, then you've been playing against guys who've been in the league for 10 years, right? And coming from a different kind of, I would say also too, like style of hockey. Like we were kind of when we were coming up through junior stuff, we were getting out of that like tougher
Mm-hmm.
hitting era. And even coming out of college too. Obviously, college there's a lot of hitting because you don't have to worry about your face getting mangled with the cages. But yeah, we were in a
Yeah.
transition period. I felt like with hockey, but yeah. So before we move on from college, what did you end up graduating with from at St. Lawrence?
So I had a bachelor of arts and honors in history. Um, so I had a senior thesis, did that, and got honors, and then I had a minor in Canadian studies, which is kind of funny. It used to be a major there because like with how close St. Lawrence is to Ottawa and Canada, like um, Canadian relations and Canada are pretty essential. And one of our professors is what was like the foremost expert on Canadian American relations. So when things are going great, they would phone him up. But yeah, got my degree. I mean, in terms of degree, unless you're going to really get into something super specific, like if you're getting into finance or you can kind of slap a degree on in a lot of jobs. Obviously, I want my engineers to have like specific degrees, and I want my doctors to have specific degrees. But in the role that I am now, it's just the ability to learn, adapt, be smart. So, bachelor of history was perfect for me.
Uh, I'm sure you're using that in your daily job now. I always laugh at that stuff.
Helps with writing emails, I guess.
Yeah, prepared you for slaving on your computer all day. Yeah, then obviously, like back to your hockey career there, I think it's a good thing to talk about that. So you obviously got your feet wet, kind of after St. Lawrence there for, I believe it's 13 games you played in the AHL. But I always like to talk about that first year because again, what you just talked about, that adjustment. And you obviously it was probably a bit of a grind because you, like many athletes in hockey, get in that kind of call up range. So, you get some AHL games and then you're going back down to the coast. Like, how was that first year for you? Like, just, I would call it the grind. Like, how was that for you physically and mentally?
So they, as a 24-year-old, they expect you to hit the ground running. There's not a lot of room for error when you're that age. As a 20-year-old, you can kind of, as a draft pick, you get a little more leeway. That's the nature of it. You're signed as a high end college prospect to kind of be able to produce and like they give you that little brief stint after the season and then into the next season and they expect you. And I got scratched the first bunch of games, got to play some games. I was mostly on the fourth line. And you kind of know after your first send down call up kind of what's going to happen. You play some games, then your role changes, and then you get sent down. So it sucks when it first happens. You think like, man, this is probably the end. I had my 1 year NHL contract, and then we'll see what happens next year. So spent I love all the guys in Portland. They had a pretty good run, lost to Manchester, who ended up winning the Calder Cup that year in the first round. And I love playing in Gwinnett. Gwinnett, Georgia was an absolute blast. Um, the guys in the coast play for different reasons than the guys in the American League, and you can absolutely see that the moment you step into the locker room. It's probably one of my most fun years, with also being one of the most difficult because it felt like the end, but I enjoyed every second of it.
I just saw you played a little bit with my old college roommate CJ Chartran that year.
Yeah, I
What a
remember
beauty
him.
that guy was.
Oh, beauty.
A couple other guys too. Nathan Burns, who's got his German pass now, so he's over in Germany. Scott Arnold was
Hockey
a
world is the smallest world ever.
yeah, it's crazy. But I wanted to ask you, so after that year, as you said, like you just kind of, you know, up and down and you kind of start to wonder and you kind of see where you fit on the depth chart, I would say at least. But did you do anything different that summer or just because that you had that full year under your belt, you kind of knew what to expect? Because the next year you end up going to Springfield, put up 43 points in 64 games. So from being 1 year ago, you couldn't, stay in the lineup, I would say, on one organization, AHL, and then the next year you just take off and then you basically for the next 5 years don't look back. But was there anything different in terms of that summer preparing or anything?
So I really, really, really focused on fitness going into my first year pro. I got down, I was like 197 pounds in my first training camp. I've been under 100 200 in a long time. Definitely nowhere near that now. But I was going back to even shooting pucks hard. You just don't shoot it as hard. You don't have you can see it in baseball too. Like guys who are hitting home runs and stuff, you kind of lose. Like a little weight helps. A lot of weight slows you down. But it was like trying to figure out, okay, what is my optimal? Like, can I play at 205 to 210? Is that going to make me too slow? 215, 220 probably makes you too slow. But you can shoot it hard. And we say in goalies, you got to stop the puck. But in every other position, if you can do something very well and the rest you can do pretty well, you can find a spot. So if you can snap pucks back on the faceoff, you might be able to find a spot because you win those faceoffs on the penalty kill. You're an absolute asset every night because we're putting you out. You're taking that face off. We're dumping the puck down. We're killing 20 seconds. So it's like I shot the puck well. I could score. So how can I get the rest of my game up to par? And going into that second season was just like really focusing on trying to figure out how can I optimize the rest of my game while still scoring. So I got kind of a pity contract because of that. They're trying to sign me to like a huge PTO out of college, and so my agent ended up working out a deal, an American League deal, and they had planned on sending me down. And I had 3 goals in 2 exhibition games, and they're like, "Well, we can't fucking send them down now." So I had a good training camp, a good AHL training camp. They took me to Arizona, had a decent camp there, and then had a good training camp in Springfield. And they're like, "Well, you're going to have to let's hang out here in the hotel for a little bit." It's the second season in a row I didn't play the first few games, but I finally got in the lineup. So they played me just a little bit. And then was it 2 or 3 games I missed? I can't remember going back too long, but I ended up playing a game against Wilkes-Barre, and I had a goal and an assist in 2 minutes of ice time. And they just would not put me back on the ice. And everyone was laughing. They're just like, every time he goes on the ice, we score, just put him back. And after the game, everyone's laughing. They're like, what the fuck was that, Cares? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I kind of snapped one from the wall, went in, and then I found Dustin Jeffrey for a nice goal in the slot. And I mean, my Corsi rating was probably the highest ever in the history of hockey. And everyone's joking, like, "Are you going to be on the first line next week?" And I was on the first line the next week. Um, and when you go from playing a third line, fourth line role to playing with the skill guys, I just started scoring goals and just kind of became my spot. So a little lucky, a little fortunate, maybe that some of those pucks went in, but that's second year pro kind of solidified my career in the American League.
Well, that's that puck luck that everyone talks about, or just the luck of, you need a chance, and when you get a chance, you got to just be able to deliver in that moment. And that's a perfect example of how, the 2 minutes of ice time you were given the week before you produced, but they wouldn't put you back on the ice, and then you got your chance the next week. And, kind of like you said, almost that pity PTO contract to now being a dominant force in the AHL. It's crazy how things can just snap and turn on a dime like that. And you end up, going to Lehigh after that and playing the next 4 years in that organization every year, being very productive. I think one of the years you guys went to the
Eastern Conference Finals.
yeah, I was gonna say the semis of the league. So Eastern Conference Finals against the Marlies there, the year that they won, I believe. And I'm just curious because you seem comfortable there, obviously, 51 points, 53, 61, 30. Um, seemed to be a place that you were obviously doing well consistently. When you were putting up these points every year, was there ever a thought in your head being like, could I get the call sometime? For me, that would just seem like frustrating, being like, yeah, clearly I'm dominating this league. I'm putting up points. Like, why can't I get, just a sniff? Like, give me 2 games or something, like, so how was that for you?
Looking back, I probably should have got one. I mean, guys start with there's set many times I was leading the league in goals, and you can get a game. But I mean, so Ron Hextall had he ran his organization exactly. He knew who he was going to call up, and you know what, that was fine. He kind of was straight with my role and what it was going to be. I know my agent pushed for it, but um, would have been nice to get a game. And just wasn't the way it shook out. I love the boys. I love playing Lehigh. Obviously the coaching staff and the fan base, and for a non-prospect to stay somewhere for 4 years is rare. Usually guys bounce around chasing money, but I liked it here, and I was I was comfortable here, and had some phenomenal teammates. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you can see seasons where everyone gets called up, doesn't matter, and other seasons it just is certain guys. And um, goes back to year before, I don't score 2 goals in 2 minutes, maybe my career's over. And I scored shit ton, and don't get a sniff in the National League. But it is what it is. I wouldn't give up my 400 games for one NHL game. Too many memories, too many good hockey memories attached to those. To play 4 minutes or 2 minutes, or
Mhm.
that's a hard thing too. When you're a skilled player, your goalie, you're playing a whole game or you're playing a whole period. But if you're just dumping pucks out there for 4 minutes or 5 minutes in a game and sit on the bench waiting to go back out, I mean, I did that my first year pro, and I did that my first year junior, and that's not me. I don't like that. I want to score. I want to score goals. I tied a lot of my probably too much of my emotional health to putting the puck in the net, because you don't score 72 unless you're an absolute superstar in pro hockey. But yeah,
No, it's so true. Like, I've said this to other people too. Like, a lot of teams, when they call guys up, like, you have some organizations that just call a guy up and then, yeah, he's our top scorer in the AHL. Well, he'll suit our fourth line, and then you're like, well, no. Where I remember, for example, like
no,
Dustin Jeffrey, who, like, he was a guy in the Penguin system, and when they were doing the 24/7, I remember he got called up, and like when they put him in, they put him in for the injured Malkin because they knew he had to go in like a top six role because
mm-hmm.
that's what he was doing in the AHL, So it's just like, you know, obviously, how you are in the AHL, the most times you're going to be the same type of player in the NHL, or you want to be that player. Like, some guys can obviously
Yeah,
change their role, but you
yeah.
made a good
There's
point.
some there's some phenomenal top six players in the Flyers. I mean, I think Giroux and Voracek are standing up for themselves. So they had some terrific. But what's very cool, not playing in the NHL, seeing your friends make it, being able to be a part of playing with guys who get called up, like that's awesome. And that definitely, have some pride with that. Playing with guys, kind of helping them on their journey to get to the NHL is awesome.
That's a good way to look at it. It's a good positive out of it. I'm curious. So after your 4 years there in Lehigh, and I know this was the COVID year too, but you ended up taking a year off. Like, was that multiple
Couldn't find it.
reasons or
Couldn't find a deal.
really?
Couldn't find a deal. And so I was some ridiculous stories that happened leading up to that. So my buddies let's go back to the summer of 2019, 20. I visited my buddy, and his grandmother backed into my car. So I saw a Canadian car, Canadian plates. I would go back in the summer, renew it. And with your insurance, they're fine with you cover, like staying, like having your Canadian insurance, they'll cover it until still there's an issue. And then, so I lost my insurance. So I couldn't insure my car in the States without American license. So I was kind of floating in between like the borderline, like call a different company, have some insurance. And then eventually, like, didn't have my license was expiring, my visa was expiring in the summer of 2020. I couldn't insure my car, and I'm like, I gotta, like, I can't leave the country because it's shut down. um if I leave, they're not going to let me, they're not going to let me back in because I don't have a visa. I'm here with my wife and dog and trying to figure that out. So, and I applied for a green card, um, and was stuck in the country for 13 months. So I couldn't even get over to Europe. There's so much shit that you have to do when you're doing a process like that, and everything is backed up with COVID. And um, going through that process, they let you can buy a car and you can get a license and you can get insurance, and so it made that part of my life easier. But then I I couldn't leave the country. I had some offers to go to Europe, and I'm like, I can't go. Um, because like I don't know when they're going to call me and say like, "Okay, you have to come down to Philly. You have an interview today." Like the American government's pretty serious, and that's how, again, my future was going to be here. Um, but so that kind of strapped me. And then the American League, kind of talking to your agent, "Oh yeah, it's coming back, it's coming back," and then waited, and it was the year where they didn't have playoffs, and they were just kind of like a couple teams playing each other. The coast was 13 teams playing in the South, and I didn't want to play in the coast, and so I just hung around, sat on the shelf for a year, which is very hard to do when you're 30 years old, and um, you thought you're kind of in the peak of your career.
That's a crazy story, but it all makes sense now because I always had been like, how is this guy, like, is he hurt? Is it COVID reason? Like, how is this guy not have a job? Like, whether it was North America or Europe. But yeah, who knew that when grandma backed into your car there, that just set you on a 13-month
Wild, wild. And I mean, if the American League had come back, I mean, I probably could have gotten a deal somewhere. Um, but Philly wasn't interested in having me back. They had a whole management changeover from Hextall to the Fletcher, and they didn't really want me back. And that happens with management changes. Happens with players. I mean, you see guys in the NHL get traded because of management change. So
mhm.
the American League, obviously, they kind of want their guys, and that's totally fine. But the one thing I didn't know is, like, I didn't want COVID to retire me. I wanted to leave on my own terms.
Yeah, and evidently, after that year, you end up going to Europe finally, playing in the ISHL there in Italy. How was that experience for you? Like, your first time obviously playing in Europe. You'd been so long in North America. Obviously, Italy, great country to live in, but how was that overall experience? And then the second part is, at the end of the season, like, did you kind of have a feeling that, this was my last year and I'm ready to move on?
So in between all of hockey, all the hockey struggle, I had my firstborn, Grant, and in 2021, and that is one of the most awesome things that I've ever experienced. Probably the most awesome thing I've ever experienced. Um, kind of just being able to hold him. He came a little too early. He's quite stubborn, and he was stubborn on entry, and he's still stubborn to this day. But um, so I had to. My wife had a great job. She was working remote, still with her company, and she's still with that company today. So when you get to stay in the American League for a long time in a certain city, some guys fly, especially Canadians and stuff like that. They don't work, but my wife is always very career driven. And she had a great career here, and I, on the other side, didn't want hockey to end. Um, tried out for the Chicago Wolves. Got caught. They won the Calder Cup that year. There realistically was no chance of making that squad. A, they didn't have any room. B, I don't know if I was really fit to play in the American League after a year and a half off. That's a long time to take off of playing. So I decided to had Reese Wilcox, my former teammate, over begging me to come. I left my baby and wife at home to go chase around a black puck for 5 months in Italy. Um, it is 100% different than the American League. I remember one of my first experiences was just getting the puck and looking and just being like, fuck, the net is far away. Like, you can shoot it hard, but you're just shooting it from different angles. Like, if I'm taking a one timer just outside the dots and American League rink, like, there's a good chance it's going to go in. And I'm looking and I'm like, I don't have this, like, this puck is not going to go in the net. So I think I only had 7 goals. I had more assists because the playmaking you can do. You have more time and more freedom that way. But it didn't help that in Pusertal, it's a brand new rink. And even my brother was like, dude, your rink is the biggest rink that I've ever seen. It's like, yeah. Everyone's like, well, what's the difference? I was like, well, if you don't have the puck and you can't get it in the D zone, you're just going to be out there for a while because they're not going to give it back. They're just going to cycle it around and back to the point. So you just start standing, trying to wear pucks. And that was an absolute change from, being able to wrap up, quick breakout, quick hit and get out. And I'm like, oh, this is different.
That's so true. The top of the circle there is probably, or the top circle in North America is probably like the blue line, or the blue line North America is the top of the circle there. Like, it's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that rink is massive too. So that's like double Olympic size. But it was cool you got to go see Europe. I'd say that. Like, obviously, as you said, there was things that were different, but it's cool to say that you got over there, got to see Italy a bit. I'm sure it was hard leaving your wife and newborn, but after that year, you decide to hang him up, and you end up transitioning. You've transitioned now into a front office job back in Lehigh Valley there. So the team you played for, as I said before the start of the podcast, you're now a father of two. So everything's kind of come together, man. Like, you're back in Lehigh, working in hockey, but more on the business side. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I knew at points in my last season and everyone's like, oh, where are you going to play next year? I was like, boys, I'm done. I don't want to. It's not for me. I mean, you beat around the puck in the ice league or offers in Slovakia. And I'm like, if I was single, I play till as long as you can. But when you have more important things, I mean, hockey's such a short part of your life. My old teammate Kyle Flanagan's like just trying to figure out what to do because you whatever you're going to do a lot longer than your hockey career was. And you got to go live for another 40, 50 years. So you got to find something that you enjoy. So I was fortunate enough here to make some very good connections with the ownership of the Phantoms, and Jim and Rob Brooks are phenomenal people. And then my current boss, Dennis Begley, I built a great relationship with him outside of the ring because unlike everyone else, I stayed. I told you my wife worked here, so I stayed in the summer. And I was like, "Well, what do you do?" It's like, "I golf." This is an absolute mecca of golf around the Philly area. The golf courses are unbelievable. So I was right at home. Um, so I built that network, and in retirement, kind of thought, "Okay, what can I do?" And reached out, and they had an opportunity for a corporate partnerships opening in the front office, and we joke it's we're slinging signs. It's sports marketing and partnerships, and especially in a market like this, it's a very active market. And the city is growing and building, and the team is right downtown and central. So being able to come back and work is very cool. My number one thing that I tell people, they're like, well, what's different? I was like, well, I don't get midday naps anymore. At the office, I'm working. I don't get the nap for a couple hours after practice, so that sucks.
The old pregame naps are out. Yeah, I noticed that in your Instagram bio there, from slinging pucks to slinging signs or something like that. That's pretty clever. But
That's a little marketing coming out of me.
there you go. But it's cool, man, to see it come full circle. From us spending I believe it was 5 a.m. night in downtown Toronto at Dead Mouse together.
Oh my gosh, what a rave that was.
I just have that memory of you. We couldn't find you, and then we come around the corner, and you were just sitting in the corner, like, and the ground was just covered in whatever liquid of some sort, and we were just like, okay, I think it's time to go. And like by the time Deadmau5 came on, it was like 3:30, and we were all like, we weren't on
Oh,
drugs, so we were like, okay,
no,
we're ready to
no,
go,
we
and
were
everyone
too
else,
young for that then. But
we were. Buddy, look at our look. I saw those pictures. Like looking at my style, I was definitely too young. I'm surprised they let me in the bar. They stole my whatever it called my pills there that I had because I couldn't have milk, my lactates. They thought it was cocaine out of the thing, so the guy took it out of my pocket. I'm like, no, no, what if I eat something?
oh,
Come a long way,
ah,
man. But
yeah, unbelievable.
all right, man. I got two more for you because I know you got
Yeah,
the newborn
what do
there.
you
So
got?
it's just a quick one. This one, did you think you would have had the career you've had when you look back on it?
Um, I think, yeah, I think that I always you when you're working with youth kids and seeing camps and teaching camps and seeing kids and different hockey players at different age groups, and you can kind of see the ones that are going to go. There's just something different about them, and I felt like you have to be very good at every level to get to the highest level. And I mean, I led my team in goal scoring basically my entire career, all the way through every year of hockey into pro. Didn't make it to the NHL, but I mean, I was going to find a way. Um, and like I said before, hockey is about scoring goals, and if you can do that, someone will find a spot. And I was able to play from 5 years old to have a 27-year hockey career. So it's pretty cool and pretty special.
It's pretty sick to look back on, like just everything you brought up there. Like, yeah, goal scorer every year, you'll find a team somewhere. And, obviously,
Right?
another slogan, put it on the
Yeah.
sign.
What can my kid do? Well, can they score goals? Well, let's work on it.
um, and last one here, always like to end on this one. It's for the young listeners out there and also kind of gives you some self reflection. So, when you're looking back on everything, what is one piece of advice or maybe multiple pieces of advice that you would give your younger self and also the younger generation? So, if you're speaking to Greg Carey back when he's 16, 17 years old, like what are some pieces of advice you would give him?
uh, I think I said this earlier in the pod, was just like I tied a lot of my emotional state to scoring goals. And hockey is what you do, hockey isn't who you are. So it's just trying to make sure you can create that gap so that when you do come to a point in your life where I am now, and I'm still working in hockey, but I'm no longer a hockey player, um, it's cool to step back and be like, that was fun. That was what I did, and I did it for a very long time, and I'm excited to share that with my kids, and um, share it with any fan or whoever wants to come up and ask me questions. But you are just a hockey player, so you can be your own person. You can, if you want to play video games, you play video games. You want to read books. You know, find what you can do outside of just being a hockey player, um, and then everything else will take care of itself.
That's a cool way to look at it. Like in terms of, we always thought about that stuff, like just for example, with Josh, like his dad obviously played longtime pro. And I'm sure like when he had Josh, he was like, you know, showing him everything he'd been through. And now like yourself, you'll
Mm-hmm.
be able to do that with your two kids. And, it's cool, man. Like just sharing your journey, sharing what you learned. And, daddy was a pro hockey player and was pretty good goal scorer too. That's why he kept finding jobs. But before we go, one other thing, I'm guessing you've me and Juice were talking about this the other day. We might have to retire the box finally because games are getting too hard for us. But have you retired the Xbox there? Weren't you a big Fable guy or Halo guy or something?
Yeah, so Starfield just came out last night, and I was trying to play it, but my little guy was a little colicky, so I had to shut it down. But I just did recently. I have Xbox and PlayStation, still gaming hard. I beat all 100% completed Hogwarts Legacy, so the nerd is still alive. Um, just everything, beat everything in the game. And my buddy's like, "You're the biggest nerd I've ever met." I'm like, "Yeah, I had an absolute blast doing it." So, well, I don't get as much time as before to play, but I still try and mix it in.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you might as well do 100%. I mean, there's no other way. But that's good. You still get it. You still get in there. I was thinking, no, it's gone. But that gives hope for me. I can give that to my wife too. She thinks I play too much, but when we have a kid one day, I'll say, you know what, all my friends still play. They find time, babe. So it's all good. But
I love it.
anyways, man, I appreciate you taking the time, sharing your story. It was great. Especially catching up with you about our Cougar days, college days. But yeah, I appreciate it, man. Best of luck with the dad life. Best of luck with the sling and signs in Lehigh there. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Hersey. Appreciate it.
And for those listening, once again, give us a follow, Instagram, YouTube. And until next week, cheers and ciao.